The storm outside St. Andrew's Medical Center wasn't the kind of rain that came and went, it was the kind that clung to the city, wrapping everything in a heavy, restless hush. Inside room 312, the beep of a heart monitor played its usual slow, steady rhythm, a sound that had echoed without change for the last 1,825 days. Eli Carter, once an energetic 13-year-old boy who raced his bicycle down quiet suburban streets, had become a fixture of this quiet hospital room. A coma after a hit-and-run had left him trapped somewhere between life and death. His body had grown, slowly, fed by machines and cared for by nurses. But his soul, it seemed, had left, until this night. Nurse Emily, doing her final rounds before the shift change, stopped outside his door. She didn't expect anything new. Just another quiet room to chart. But when she entered, something felt different. The room was still. Too still. Then, a flicker. His eyelids fluttered. At first, she thought it was a muscle spasm. Wishful thinking. But then his fingers twitched. His chest began to rise in deeper, more conscious breaths. And his eyes opened. Dark. Wide. Frightened. Nurse Emily dropped her chart. Dr. Ramirez, she shouted down the hallway. He's awake. Eli Carter is awake. Doctors and nurses rushed in, disbelief written on every face. Some had cared for him for years, others had been told he was one of those cases, the ones that rarely end well. But Eli was awake. His gaze darted around the room, disoriented and sharp. His voice cracked, barely above a whisper, but carried like thunder in the silence. Don't let her near me again. Before the staff could even begin to process the miracle of his awakening, they were confronted with the darkness he had brought back with him. And before we go deeper into this heart-wrenching and suspenseful story, take a moment to subscribe to Heartline Stories, where we share powerful, real, emotional stories that will stay with you long after the video ends. Join a family where every heartbeat tells a story worth hearing. Eli's mother, Claire, arrived within the hour, breathless and pale, the hope she had buried for years suddenly reborn. She burst into tears at the sight of her son awake, whispering his name, brushing his overgrown hair away from his face. Baby, you came back to me. But Eli didn't smile. He looked over her shoulder, then back at the nurses with urgent eyes. She said no one would believe me. That I should have died. Silence fell like a curtain. The doctors assumed delirium. A side effect of neural reactivation. Hallucinations were common after long-term comas. But over the next 48 hours, Eli repeated his story. Always the same. Always consistent. He remembered everything. He had been conscious the entire time, trapped inside his body like a prisoner, unable to scream, blink, or move. He listened to conversations. Heard machines hum. Heard the sorrow in his mother's voice when she thought he couldn't hear. But worst of all, he heard her. A woman came late at night, he said. She smelled like bleach and lavender. She wore a white coat, she wasn't a nurse. She called me names. She said I ruined her life. That one day, she'd unplug me when no one was watching. Eli described a lullaby she'd hum, always out of tune. And a silver necklace with a broken clasp that dangled from her collar every time she leaned close. Claire's blood ran cold. Over the coming days, Eli provided chilling details, the ringtone of a nurse's phone, the names of orderlies he overheard during late-night shifts, even a memory of the night his father died. He had heard Claire sobbing in the hallway but couldn't move to comfort her. The doctors were shaken. No one could have known those things unless they were aware, said Dr. Jensen, the hospital's chief neurologist. Eli's memory is too consistent. Too sharp. It's not a fabrication. Claire began an investigation on her own, fueled by the desperation only a mother could feel. She requested old shift logs, HR reports, staff reviews from 5 years ago. One name kept appearing, Lillian Morris. A night orderly assigned to Eli's floor for over 2 years. Quiet. Polite. Never formed close bonds with staff. Left the hospital suddenly, without notice. Claire brought the name to Dr. Jensen. He stiffened. There were whispers, he admitted. Patients uncomfortable. One complaint from a terminal patient's family. But no proof. No official file. When Eli was shown a photograph of Lillian Morris, printed from the old database, he froze. His voice cracked as he pointed. That's her. She used to whisper that she'd pull my plug if my mother didn't give up. She said I was a waste of space. It was no longer a mystery. But it became something worse when a nurse on duty saw an unfamiliar woman enter the third floor late one night. Caught on security footage, hooded, fast-moving, swiping an outdated ID card. Eli woke screaming that night. She's here. She's here. By the time security arrived, she was gone. But now the police were involved. They reopened the case, matched fingerprints on the abandoned ID badge. The match was undeniable. Lillian Morris. Further investigation revealed chilling discoveries. 2 nonverbal patients in another hospital had died under suspicious circumstances, both under her care. One report from a care home mentioned a staff member who smelled like lavender bleach and sang lullabies, but that case was closed due to insufficient evidence. Now, with Eli's testimony, they had more than rumors. Eli was not just a boy who survived a coma. He was a witness. The media swarmed. Headlines read, "Boy in coma exposes abusive hospital worker." Eli struggled with the attention. Reporters called. Networks wanted interviews. But the trauma lingered like a fog. He suffered night terrors, anxiety attacks, and depression. He couldn't ride a bike anymore. Couldn't sleep alone. Couldn't walk past a hospital corridor without his hands shaking. One day, he asked his mother, "Why didn't anyone hear me?" Claire broke down. "I heard you, baby. I just didn't know I did." With therapy, Eli slowly began healing. But what truly transformed him was purpose. He started attending medical conferences with Claire, speaking publicly about coma awareness, unresponsive wakefulness, and the ethical care of long-term patients. He told his story not for sympathy, but as a warning: just because someone can't speak, doesn't mean they aren't screaming inside. And dear friends of Heartline Stories, if Eli's bravery and journey touched something deep in you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Help us bring stories like this to light, stories that don't just break hearts, but rebuild them with truth and courage. A year later, on the anniversary of his awakening, Eli was invited to speak at a national conference for neurological care. He stood behind the microphone, voice trembling but firm, and said, "I spent 5 years trapped inside my body. Every second I wanted to scream. But I heard everything. And I never forgot. I remember the kindness, and the cruelty. I remember the people who cared. And I remember the one who didn't. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for the others. The ones still trapped. The ones still unheard." The room fell silent. Then thunderous applause. That night, when Eli returned home, he found a small package on the porch. No return address. Inside, a worn silver necklace with a broken clasp. He stood in the doorway, rain falling softly behind him, clutching the chain with a strange calm. Then he walked out to the backyard, dug a hole beneath the old oak tree, and buried it. He didn't need to carry her shadow anymore. He had his voice now. And it was louder than fear. Sometimes, survival isn't just waking up. It's speaking out. And Eli Carter didn't just survive, he awakened a world that had forgotten to listen.